Welcome back and thank you for staying with eNCA. Now, trade union Solidarity believes the National Energy Regulator of South Africa is giving too much attention to Eskom. Solidarity argues that instead of focusing on tariff increase requests from the power utility, it should instead be poring over applications from private power generators who could feed into the grid. I'm now joined by Theuns Du Buisson, an economist researcher for the Solidarity Research Institute to expand on this particular matter. Thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Just firstly, the solution that you're coming up with is that Nersa should be concentrating a lot on IPPs that are trying to get onto the grid, right? But we have so much red tape in South Africa. That's going to take a while. It already is.
Yeah, you rightly point out that we have way too much red tape, and that was put in place mainly by Nersa and also the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, who are just not coming to the table. It was small-scale power production was to an extent deregulated a year ago, but they have not come to the party, and now we're sitting with a situation where Eskom is able to generate less and less energy, and therefore have to charge more and more for it. And it's really a spiral of destruction that could have no good ending.
And, one of the excuses that Nersa usually gives when it does grant, a huge tariff hike, such as this 18% during load shedding stage 6, is that they have no choice. They say that they have given Eskom some, things that it should be meeting. For instance, the amount of diesel that they have to purchase, etc., is what forced Nersa to allow them this increase. But a lot of people are saying there were other ways that Eskom could have actually made sure that it has the money to be able to bail itself out, such as the overstaffing, etc. What do you say about the fact that Nersa says its hands were tied?
Yeah, every year they also say that if they don't approve an increase in the electricity price, it will come down to state bailout, where taxpayers' money is used to bail out Eskom. And every year we see that both happen. Eskom is bailed out and a massive power price increase is approved. And it's not just one or the other. And yeah, there's definitely a lot Eskom could have done and should continue, or at least start doing in the near future. One of those being to really speak to the lack of generation capacity. If you know that many of your power plants are offline most of the time, then it's high time to replace them. Unfortunately, that does take a long time, but some renewable sources like solar could be set up immediately and be joined to the grid within months or even weeks in some cases. And Eskom has already confirmed in the past that they do have enough space available. They do have the grid capacity to do it, but for some reason they are just not doing it.
Mr. Du Buisson, I need you to explain something to me, and I'm sure viewers at home also are battling to understand it. I thought electricity was a pay-as-you-use type of service, right? But every time my electricity bill comes at the end of the month, there is absolutely no change to what I used to pay when I actually had electricity for most days in the month. Now, when you're on stage 6 load shedding, you have no power for 10 hours a day. That's 70 hours in a week. What are we paying for? If it's a service that is a pay-as-you-use service, aren't we being cheated as South Africans to be expected to still pay the same amount that we would pay if we had electricity, and every day of the week?
Yeah, what's basically happening is we're forced to contain the same amount of electricity that we would have used during load shedding, like to keep your geyser and your fridges and so on running, just during the times when we do have electricity. So we're in effect not using much less. We're using less at a time, perhaps. But from a consumer standpoint, load shedding really does not reduce the amount of electricity you use. Some people have even made the case that it worsens it because now your geyser has become completely cold, your fridge has become hot, and now it has to work even harder to maintain its regular cycle. So, and the other problem is infrastructure that gets damaged. So, in the end, municipalities are also forced to hike their reselling hikes because of extra costs that accompany load shedding. things like cable theft that also increased during load shedding. It really has absolutely no benefit for anyone except for peak-time load reduction on Eskom's side.
I know that you're a researcher, but legally, isn't that wrong? Isn't there anything that we can do as South Africans? I mean, to be expected to pay for services in full that you didn't have in full. Isn't there anything we can do legally as South Africans to challenge this?
Well, if you can really prove that they're charging you for units that you didn't use, then a class action would definitely be possible. But the problem is, in a functioning market, we should have been able to say, either us as individuals or municipalities, to say we're not happy with the service we're receiving from Eskom, and therefore we're moving to another supplier. But at this stage, the only mass-scale electricity supplier in South Africa is Eskom. And for that also, Nersa has to come to the party and give us other options, be it on a small scale or on a much larger scale, because Eskom is fast approaching collapse, not as fast as some of the viral WhatsApp messages that's been coming around may suggest, but it seems to be coming, and when that day comes, we would have to urgently have other options available, and that is simply not happening at this stage.
Just one more quick question, Mr. Du Buisson, to go back to your to Solidarity's point that Nersa should be concentrating on the IPPs. Bid window 5, for instance, was extended in terms of Eskom and the Department of Mineral Resources. We were told that it would take 12 to 24 months, and South Africans were excited. Is there a correlation, obviously, between Nersa and government in terms of at least trying to fast track the possibility of us getting IPPs working as soon as possible?
It was said that it was a priority and that the process is changing, but we have not seen any of that. In practice, my suggestion would be to get rid of the bid window model entirely, and as soon as people are willing and able to connect to the grid, to allow them to have published wheeling tariffs and input tariffs from either Eskom or municipalities, and to allow them to purchase electricity from wherever they can get it, as long as it's safely produced and complies with minimal regulations. It should be a portal or an online form that people fill out, brief inspection, and then they're linked to the grid. But at this stage, you have to wait for the next bid window to open. It's now been extended because it's a bid process. It also has to comply with tender regulations. So it's a lot of unnecessary red tape and hassle that we really cannot afford to have in place during this crisis. The energy crisis is one of the greatest crises this country has ever faced, and it has the potential to sink our economy completely. And it's just really not getting the attention it deserves from government.
Simply put, Mr. Du Buisson, I agree. We should be given the right as South Africans to make the decision ourselves to go for an independent power producer, because it's not like Eskom is able to actually give us electricity that is sustainable. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Theuns Du Buisson, he's an economics researcher for the Solidarity Research Institute.